Good day, this is chapter 15, the urinary system. Disclaimer, again, this is only for the BS Pharmacy students of San Pedro College for the academic year 2025 to 2026. Please do not reproduce or sell this material to other students. The learning objectives of this discussion includes the following: to describe the major functions of the urinary system and its role in the homeostasis, to describe the structure and blood supply of the kidneys, to relate the parts of to the nephron to their functions, explain the processes of urine formation, which includes filtration, reabsorption, and secretion, to discuss the role of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system in regulating blood pressure and fluid balance, and to describe the functions of the ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra, and to relate maturation and renal function to fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. So in general, we already discussed the structures and functions of the urinary system back in chapter 1. But to review, the kidney is for disposal of waste products through the urine, including nitrogenous wastes, toxins, drugs, and excess ions. But aside from these, the kidneys is also involved in other functions, including the production of renin, which is important in the regulation of blood pressure. Hence, if you have hypertension, one of the problems may be because of this system, including the urine. Another function of the kidneys is the production of erythropoietin, and this hormone is important for the production of red blood cells in the long bones. Hence, if you have kidney disease, such as in the case of chronic kidney disease, the kidney have problems producing erythropoietin, hence the patient or the person may experience anemia. Kasi kung wala ka ng erythropoietin, you don't have or the long bones will not be stimulated to produce also red blood cells, hence resulting to anemia. Another function of the kidney is to convert vitamin D to its active form. The organs of the urinary system includes the kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra, and we will discuss each of these later. So this diagram shows you the location of the organs of the urinary system. You have here the kidneys, the ureters. These slender tubes here are the ureters. Then down you have the urinary bladder and the urethra. The kidneys. Let's start with the kidneys, which are located retroperitoneally. Retroperitoneally meaning retro behind, peritoneum, the peritoneum. Okay. The kidneys are located at the level of the lumbar vertebrae or at the lumbar region. And comparing the two kidneys, the right kidney is slightly lower because of the presence of the liver above it. So this right kidney is located or situated at the right upper quadrant, just below the liver. So you have here the two kidneys at the lumbar region. So the kidney is a bean-shaped organ. So sa bean shape, it has a region here called the renal hilum, which is an indention of the kidney where structures enter and exit the kidney, such as the ureters, renal artery, renal vein, and some nerves. Okay, at the adjacent to the kidney, you can also find the adrenal glands, which sits atop each kidney. Now for the structure of the kidney is surrounded with three layers. The innermost layer is the fibrous capsule, then followed by the perirenal fat capsule, then the renal fascia, which is the outermost or most superficial layer. For the regions of the kidneys, you have these three regions, the renal cortex and the renal medulla and the renal pelvis. The renal cortex is the outer region of the kidney. So same thing sa adrenal gland. Sa adrenal gland, you have the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. Same sa brain, you have the cerebral cortex. Cortex means the outer region always. So this is the renal cortex. The inner or the deeper region is the renal medulla. The renal medulla, you can see here you have dark regions. These dark regions are called your renal pyramids or your medullary pyramids. The lighter regions of the renal medulla is your renal column. Your renal pelvis is the medial region of the kidney where you can find calyces such as your minor or your major calyces that drains urine from the renal tubules. Okay, these calyces fuse together to form greater tubules or calyces, and they will drain the urine down to the ureters. So dito pababa is your ureter, which exits your through the renal hilum. So you can find here the renal cortex, the renal medulla here, and the renal pelvis here. Okay. In the renal medulla, you can find the renal pyramids. These are the renal pyramids. Then the columns are in between. The pelvis naman contains your minor and major calyces, and this renal pelvis drain into the ureter, which exits the kidney through the renal hilum. So this is the renal hilum, where different structures such as your ureter, renal vein, renal artery, and nerves exit or enter the kidney. As for the blood supply of the kidney, these are the structures that are involved in supplying the blood of the urine. So all of the blood of the urine comes from the aorta, which is the largest artery of the circulatory system. And branching off from the aorta is the renal artery. And the renal artery is the structure that enters through the renal hilum. Then the renal artery will branch off to become this series of arteries, which I don't need you to memorize. But at the end, this becomes your afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole will enter the nephron to become the glomerulus, and the glomerulus will exit to become your efferent arteriole. And this efferent arteriole becomes your peritubular capillaries. Notice you still have here the terms afferent and efferent. Afferent papunta. So it's the same sa neurons. You have the afferent neuron. In here, you have the afferent arteriole papunta sa glomerulus. And paglabas sa glomerulus, it becomes the efferent arteriole. Then it becomes the peritubular capillaries. Then they fuse to become this series of veins until it becomes the renal vein. The renal vein will exit the kidney through the renal hilum as it meets to the inferior vena cava. So what I want you to memorize is just these highlighted structures here. Now, for us to better understand how the kidney produces urine or forms urine, we have to understand how the nephron works. The nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidneys. And these nephrons are made up of two main structures, the renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. Find found, what you can find here in the diagram is the renal corpuscle. This is the renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. So this tube structure is the renal tubule. This one. So ito yung lahat. This is the renal tubule. This structure here is the renal corpuscle. And particularly for the renal corpuscle, it is consisted of the glomerulus and the glomerular capsule. The glomerulus is the knot of capillaries inside the glomerular capsule or the Bowman's capsule is a structure encapsulating this glomerulus. Okay? So the glomerulus naman is made up of podocytes, podo meaning feet, cytes meaning cells. So these podocytes have filtration slits which allows the components of the blood from the glomerulus to be filtered out into the glomerular capsule. Okay? So itong mga podocytes, itong mga slits ng podocytes, mga butas yan sila. Such that yung laman or components of the blood will exit to reach the capsule. Dito sila papunta sa capsule. Okay? Pagdating dito sa capsule, pwede na sila makaproceed sa renal tubule, palabas dito. So this is what the nephron looks like as you zoom in the kidneys. So dito, as you zoom in here in the junction of the cortex and the medulla of the kidney, you can find here millions of nephrons. So as the components of the blood exit or filtered out into the capsule, these components will then proceed to the renal tubule. So this is now the renal tubule. The renal tubule has three segments. This includes the proximal convoluted tubule, the nephron loop, and the distal convoluted tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule or the PCT, proximal. Siya yung right next to the renal corpuscle. So if this is your renal corpuscle, after which is the PCT. After the PCT is the nephron loop or the loop of Henle. And after the loop of Henle is the distal convoluted tubule. Distal meaning pinakamalayo from the renal corpuscle. So the nephrons can be categorized by their location. Cortical nephrons, for example, are located in the or entirely in the cortex, which is applicable to most of the nephrons. And you also have the juxtamedullary nephrons, in which a part of the nephron is also found in the medulla. So you can see here the cortical nephrons, in which its entire corpuscle and renal tubule are found in the renal cortex only. Your juxtamedullary nephron naman, part of the tubule, particularly the nephron loop, is located in the renal medulla. Nephron also have two capillary beds associated to it, the glomerulus and the peritubular capillary bed. The glomerulus is what we have discussed a while ago. So the glomerulus is being fed by the afferent arteriole. Then as the glomerulus exit, it becomes the efferent arteriole. So these blood vessels are continuous such that ang difference lang ng efferent and efferent is sino yung papasok, sino yung lalabas. Okay. Then you have the peritubular capillary beds, which come from the afferent arteriole. So you can notice here, the afferent arteriole, as it enters the corpuscle, it becomes your glomerulus. Then, as the glomerulus exits, it becomes the efferent. Then the efferent will meet with the renal tubule to become your peritubular capillaries. So peri meaning surrounding. These capillaries are just adjacent to your renal tubule through its entire length from the proximal convoluted tubule, nephron loop, and even to the distal convoluted tubule. This means along the entire tubule or renal tubule, may kadikit parati na capillary. And that communication with the tubule and the capillary is important because that explains how these three processes of urine formation occur. So, in order for us to better understand how urine formation works, we can further dissect this into these three processes: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Glomerular filtration is the first step that occurs in the renal corpuscle, wherein components of the blood from the glomerulus will be filtered out into the glomerular capsule. Okay, so that is filtration. That depends now on the capacity um, of the slits in the glomerulus to allow the exit of the um, components of the blood. Some components of the blood that are not able to be filtered out because of their size, primarily because of their size, is there are the blood cells, such as your red blood cells and white blood cells, and your proteins or blood proteins. Sa kalaki nila, hindi sila makadaan sa butas ng glomerulus para ma-filter out papunta sa glomerular capsule. Okay. So this happens in the renal corpuscle. Now, as the filtrate exit and enters the renal tubule, two processes may occur: tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. The difference between the two, tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion, is just the movement of these components. If the component moves from the renal tubule into the peritubular capillary, that is tubular reabsorption. And as what I always emphasize, basta reabsorption, may word absorb, that means the movement is towards the blood. Okay? So example, if you have tubular reabsorption of water, water is being reabsorbed into the blood. Now, in tubular secretion, the components are moved from the blood into the filtrate or into the tubule. So example, if there is tubular secretion of potassium, potassium moves from the blood to the filtrate. And kung magstay sila sa filtrate, they will then subsequently move into the urine. So the components here in the filtrate will become your urine. Filtration. In filtration, again, the most important factor if the component of the blood will be filtered out is the size. So um, once they are once they are able to fit through the slits of the glomerulus, the they will reach the capsule or the glomerular capsule to become the filtrate. If the arterial blood, another factor, aside from the size, is the blood pressure. If the arterial blood pressure is too low, especially in the afferent arteriole, the filtrate formation stops because glomerular pressure will be too low to form the filtrate. Meaning, kung mababa ang pressure sa sa artery or sa arteriole, it will not there will not be enough force to push the components into the filtrate. Next process, tubular reabsorption. In tubular reabsorption, important to take note is most of the components are being reabsorbed actively or through the use of ATP. And most of the reabsorption also occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule. However, there are still components being reabsorbed in the other segments of the renal tubule. For example, in the nephron loop, distal convoluted tubule, and even the collecting ducts. In tubular secretion, it is important for getting rid of waste materials, and the materials that are being left in the filtrate will now then become components of the urine. So basically, tubular secretion is the reverse of reabsorption. So this diagram shows you the components that are being reabsorbed and secreted in each of the segment. So I want you to memorize all of these components that are being reabsorbed and secreted in each of the segment. First, in the proximal tubule, you can see here arrows pointing away from the tubule and arrows pointing towards the tubule. If the arrow is pointing away from the tubule, meaning this component moves toward the blood. Kasi away from the tubule towards the blood. So this is renal reabsorption. If the arrow is pointing towards the tubule, this means this component moves from the bloodstream. So this is renal secretion. So for you to understand this diagram, arrows pointing away, these are renal reabsorption. Same here, reabsorption. Arrows pointing towards is renal secretion. Okay, so in the proximal tubule, the components that are being reabsorbed back into the blood are sodium chloride, bicarbonate ions, water, glucose, and amino acids. Most important here in the proximal tubule is the reabsorption of all glucose and amino acids, such that paglabas dito, the filtrate moving out of the renal tubule will not have any glucose or amino acid. Kaya normally, our urine does not have any glucose or amino acid. Now, this also means that glucose and amino acids are being freely filtered out of the renal corpuscle. Now, what are the components being secreted here in the proximal tubule? This includes your some drugs and poisons and hydrogen ions. Nephron loop. For the nephron loop, you have water and sodium chloride being reabsorbed here in the nephron loop. And later we also discuss what are the other components being reabsorbed. In the distal loop, or distal tubule rather, you have sodium chloride being reabsorbed and potassium and some drugs being secreted. Here in the collecting duct, you also have water, sodium chloride, urea, and water being reabsorbed, and you also have potassium being secreted. Now, this diagram is derived from Katzung, which is our primary textbook for pharmacology. And you can notice here some diuretics or drugs that target several uh, structures here in the renal tubule. This is why we need to memorize what happens in the renal tubule kasi this is the primary target of a couple of drugs for diuresis. So, some components being reabsorbed here, but for you in your level, what I just want you to study is What are the components being reabsorbed and secreted? And what are the structures responsible in each of these segments? So this also the diagram summarizes that the components being reabsorbed here in the proximal tubule are your sodium chloride and sodium bicarbonate and water. Then here, in the nephron loop, this diagram eh, details that the nephron loop have subsegments. It has the thin descending limb, thick, thin ascending limb, and the thick ascending limb. So all of these are parts of the nephron loop or the loop of Henle. So thin descending, thin na pababa, thin ascending, thin na pataas, and thick na ascending, makapal na pataas. Sa thin descending, you have water being reabsorbed. Sa thick ascending, you have couple of ions such as potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, and also chloride ions being reabsorbed here in this segment. In the distal convoluted tubule, you have calcium being reabsorbed and you still have potassium being secreted. In the collecting tubule, you have potassium and hydrogen ions being secreted, sodium chloride being reabsorbed, and water being reabsorbed. Now, this table summarizes the or specifies the components that are being reabsorbed and what are the structures that are responsible in the reabsorption and secretion of these substances. First, in the proximal convoluted tubule, here you can in here sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium are being reabsorbed. Sodium bicarbonate is being reabsorbed, and 100% of glucose and amino acids are being reabsorbed. This is all because this is because are the structures responsible for these are your sodium hydrogen exporter, which allows you to reabsorb sodium and secrete hydrogen. And you also have the carbonic anhydrase. For the in descending limb of the nephron loop or loop of Henle, you have aquaporins. These are channels that allows you to reabsorb water. In the thick ascending limb, you have the NKCC2 or the sodium potassium chloride channel, which allows you to reabsorb sodium potassium chloride because of the reabsorption of calcium and magnesium. For the distal convoluted tubule, you have the NCC or the sodium chloride cotransporter, which allows you to reabsorb sodium and chloride ions, and also the reabsorption of calcium rather, in the DCT. And in the collecting tubule, you have the ENaC or the sodium channels responsible for absorbing sodium, potassium channels for secreting potassium, and hydrogen transporters for also for secreting secretion of hydrogen. And you still have aquaporins in the collecting tubule for the reabsorption of water under the control of vasopressin, which is a hormone. Now, in the urine also where you can secrete nitrogenous wastes such as urea, uric acid, and creatinine. Urea is the end product of protein breakdown. Uric acid is the result from nucleic acid metabolism, and creatinine is associated with creatine metabolism in muscles. Normally, urine being formed by kidney is about 1 to 1.8 liters per day. However, that may be increased or decreased depending on the hydration of the person. However, the urine does not contain normally blood or proteins, as for reasons explained a while ago, and the urine is a result of the what is being filtered out and secreted in the different processes of urine formation. These are in order for you to know if there are any abnormalities in the urine, you also need to know what is normal in a urine. So urine is normally clear and pale to deep yellow in color. The color depends on the hydration status of the person. So if the person drinks a lot of water, the urine output may be clear or pale. If the person is not drinking enough of water, the urine may come out as dark in color. The yellow color of the urine is due to the pigment urochrome, which is from the destruction of hemoglobin. Okay. Another characteristic of the urine is it is sterile at the time of formation. Sterile means it is void of any microorganism. So dapat wala talaga microorganism sa urine. The urine is also slightly aromatic because of the ammonia it contains. It is slightly acidic at pH 4.6 to 8, and it has a specific gravity of 1.001 to 1.030. Some solutes normally found in the urine are sodium, potassium, urea, uric acid, creatine, ammonia, and bicarbonate ions. And these are the solutes that are not normally found in the urine, including glucose, blood proteins, cells, hemoglobin, and bile. If you ever have any of these components in the urine, these are the conditions. Glycosuria is the presence of glucose in urine, and this may be because of the excess sugar intake of the person, or the person may also have diabetes mellitus already. Proteins. For if you have proteins in the urine, you may have proteinuria, or sometimes called albuminuria. This may be because of physical exertion or pregnancy. Or some disorders or diseases include glomerulonephritis and hypertension. If you have pus in the if you have pus in the urine, that is always abnormal, or that is always pathologic. The possible cause of the pyuria is UTI or urinary tract infection. If you have RBCs in the urine, you have hematuria, and this may be because of trauma or bleeding in the urinary tract. Hemoglobin in the urine is hemoglobinuria, and this may be because of transfusion reactions and hemolytic anemia. These are conditions in which there is lysis of red blood cells or destruction of the red blood cells, releasing the hemoglobin of the red blood cells. If you have bile pigment in the urine, that is bilirubinuria. Example of diseases which present as such is liver disease or hepatitis. Now that's for the kidneys. For the ureters, the next organ of the urinary tract, these are slender tubes that are 25 to 30 cm long, attached to the kidney to the urinary bladder. So the ureters are continuous with the renal pelvis, and they enter the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder behind the peritoneum. Peristalsis also aids in the movement of the urine through the ureter aside from gravity. So you can see here the ureters from the hilum of the kidneys to the urinary bladder. You can see here the urinary bladder attaches or exits to the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder through the ureteral orifice. Now, the urinary bladder is a smooth collapsible muscular sac situated posterior to the pubic symphysis. This is a storage of urine only, so it is not a site of urine production. In here, in the urinary bladder, you have muscles that control the storage or transport of urine. A Such muscular structure is the trigone, which is a triangular region at the base of the urinary bladder. The trigone is also the location of two openings of the ureters or the ureteral orifices and one opening to the urethra, which is the internal urethral orifice. In males, the prostate surrounds the neck of the urinary bladder. The walls of the urinary bladder is also composed of muscles called the Trusor muscle. So these are the muscular parts of the urinary bladder. In here is the detrusor muscle in the wall of the urinary bladder. The detrusor muscle. The area here below is the trigone, which is also a muscular layer where you can, or muscular region where you can find the ureteral orifices, kung saan lumalabas yung ihi from the ureter, and the internal urethral orifice, where you have the internal urethral sphincter. In males, this this part here is the neck of the bladder, where the prostate is where the prostate surrounds. Okay? And this is pertinent because if lumaki masyado yung prostate around this region, this will cause obstruction of urine output here. So mas mahirapan yung lalaki makaihi because of the enlarged prostate. The urinary bladder is able to hold as much as 500 ml of urine or half a liter of urine. So this is what happens when the urinary bladder is being filled with urine. Remember you have two muscles important in the urinary bladder. You have the detrusor muscles, which are the muscles in the walls of the urine, and the trigone muscle, which is found here at the base of the urinary bladder. If the detrusor muscle contracts, this pushes the urine out of the urinary bladder. And what the trigone muscles do is they have to relax. Because in the trigone muscle, you can find here the ureteral orifices and the internal um, internal sphincter. Okay, so in order for the internal sphincter to open, the trigone muscle also has to relax. Okay, so in order again to release the urine out of the urinary bladder, the detrusor muscle has to contract, then the trigone muscle has to relax. And opposite naman in withholding the urine. The detrusor muscle has to relax and the trigone muscle has to contract in order to close the internal sphincter. Now, after the urinary bladder is the urethra, which is a thin-walled tube that carries urine from the urinary bladder to the outside of the body by peristalsis. The urethra in males and females is different because of the length of the urethra. And also, in females, the urethra carries only urine, whereas in males, it carries urine and sperm. Same as your anus, the urethra also has two sphincters, the internal urethral sphincter and the external urethral sphincter. Of the two, the external urethral sphincter is voluntary or made up of skeletal muscles. The internal urethral sphincter is involuntary and made up of smooth muscles. Comparing the urethra of male and females, the female is shorter at 3 to 4 cm. The urethra of the male is longer because the males also have the urethra of the male courses through the penis, whereas in the females, wala namang penis and females. So it is shorter. Another example again of the males is the presence of so although this is in the female, this diagram is a female urethra. In males, the major difference in male is the presence of the prostate surrounding this area of the or region of the urethra. Now, micturition. Micturition is the process, or also called as voiding. It's a process of emptying the urinary bladder. It has two sphincters that control the release of urine, the internal urethral sphincter and the external urethral sphincter. Bladder may start, uh, co- bladder collects urine to 200 ml, wherein stretch receptors of the bladder wall may be stimulated to transmit impulse to the sacral region of the spinal cord. These impulses will go back to um, the urinary bladder to induce contractions. When contractions become stronger in the urinary bladder, the urine is forced past the involuntary sphincter into the upper urethra, and there is urge to void, and the urge to void is felt. So with this, it's only the external sphincter that is voluntarily controlled, so maturation can usually be delayed. However, in this, the contraction is made possible by the contraction of the detrusor muscle, and the relaxation of the involuntary internal sphincter is made possible by the relaxation of the trigone muscle. Now for the urinary system is not only responsible for the formation of urine, but also in the balance of fluid electrolytes and acid-base balance. So the blood composition depends on three factors: the diet, cellular metabolism, and urine output. Kidneys have four roles in maintaining blood composition: excreting nitrogen-containing wastes, maintaining water balance of the blood, maintaining electrolyte balance of the blood, and ensuring proper blood pH. To know how much of how much the kidneys have to balance, there is differences in the body composition of water in different populations. In young adult females, 50% of the body is made up of water. Young adult males have 60% of the body made up of water. Babies have the most but or has the highest water composition at 75%, whereas the elderly has the lowest water composition at 45%. So, madiscuss ito lahat-lahat again in Biofarm. The water is the water in the body are found in three compartments. The first compartment is the intracellular fluid. Then you also have the extracellular fluid. Then you have the plasma or blood. The plasma is part of the ECF or the extracellular fluid. Intracellular fluid are water found inside the cells. Extracellular fluid is fluids that are found outside of the cell. So the plasma is found also outside of the cell. So the plasma is a part of ECF. So this diagram shows you or helps you visualize where 100% of the water stays in the body. So for 40%, so in our bodies are made, or the adult male is composed of 60% of body weight. Of the 60% of the body weight, or 40 liters, in a 70 kilogram male, sa 40 liters approximately, you have 40%, 40% is in the intracellular fluid. So they are found inside the cells. The extracellular fluid is found outside the cell. So this is composed of the 20% of the body weight. So this is total body water. Two-thirds is nasa ICF, one-third is nasa ECF. Okay? Then the ECF is subdivided into plasma and interstitial fluid. The plasma is found inside the blood vessel. The interstitial fluid is not found in the blood vessel. So, ano yung labas ng cells aside from the blood? That is the interstitial fluid. So, these are the spaces in between the cells but are outside the blood vessel. So, in order to maintain the water balance in the body, we have to balance the input and the output of water also in our body. For the input of water, the sources of water input is the water that we ingest as either fluids or food, or through the production of water from different metabolic processes. The important driver for us to intake water is the thirst mechanism. So this is the so this diagram summarizes how much we intake and how much is released out of the body. So the intake of water comes from mostly by the beverages that we drink. Some are from the food through the moisture of the food that we partake, and the others again from the different cellular processes in the body as a result of these processes. The output of water comes mostly by the urine, some by the insensible losses via the skin and the lungs, some by the sweat, and a few from the feces. So through the primarily by the large intestines and even by the other organs of the digestive system. So from the intake, most of the intake is drive by driven by the thirst mechanism in order for us to seek more water. And the output of the water is mostly controlled by the formation of urine. The thirst mechanism is sensed by the osmoreceptors, which are located in the hypothalamus, that detects any change in the osmolarity or concentration of solutes in the different water compartments. So the more highly concentrated these solutes are, the more that the hypothalamus detects that we need more water. Hence, it will activate the thirst mechanism. It will result to us seeking more water. So, this diagram shows you the events following the thirst mechanism. Again, as the plasma solutes concentration increase, this will stimulate the osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus to stimulate the hypothalamic thirst center. Also, the decrease in saliva production, hence resulting to a dry mouth, also stimulate the hypothalamic thirst center, giving us a sensation of thirst, and hence the person seeking the intake of more water. As water moistens the mouth and throat and stretches the stomach and intestines, this will then result to the water absorption from the GI tract, hence decreasing the concentration of plasma solutes. So this is the input, ito yung output naman to go back to maintain homeostasis. Sources of water output naman includes the lungs as insensible since we cannot see we cannot sense the water leaving. Um, on the skin normally as perspiration, some in the feces, and mostly in the urine. Some hormones that are responsible for the reabsorption of water and electrolytes by the kidneys include your antidiuretic hormone or ADH. It prevents the excessive water loss in the urine and increases the water absorption. So, if um if there is or when we are dehydrated, this our body will secrete more antidiuretic hormone in order for us to only release few water or as little water as possible through the urine. Second hormone is the aldosterone, which helps regulate the blood composition and blood volume by acting on the kidney. For each sodium reabsorbed, a chloride ion follows and potassium ion is secreted in the filtrate. Because water follows salt, when sodium is reabsorbed, water is also then reabsorbed back to the blood. Another mechanism, uh, the, Another mechanism to control the electrolyte balance in our body is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or the RAAS. It is mediated by the juxtaglomerular apparatus, which is located in the afferent arterioles. That is very specific sa afferent arterioles. When the cells of the JG apparatus are stimulated by the low blood pressure in the afferent arterioles, this will release the enzyme renin into the bloodstream. So, if there is again low blood pressure, primarily because of blood volume or hyperperfusion of the kidneys, or simply the person is dehydrated, the decrease in blood perfusion in the afferent arteriole will result to the release of renin. So what is then the result of renin releasing into the blood? Renin catalyzes the reactions that produce angiotensin 2, wherein angiotensin 2 naman subsequently causes vasoconstriction and aldosterone release, hence increasing the blood volume and blood pressure. So this diagram shows you the effects of renin. Again, the stimulus in order for renin to be released is a decrease in blood perfusion in the afferent arterioles. With that, the JG cells or the juxtaglomerular cells will detect that change in order to release the renin. Then the renin will also release or will then convert or lead to the conversions into angiotensin 2. The result of the or effect of the angiotensin 2 naman is to cause the vasoconstriction or the decrease in the diameter of the arterioles, resulting in increase in blood pressure. The adrenal cortex is also stimulated to release aldosterone to target the kidney tubules to increase the reabsorption of water and sodium, okay, resulting to an increase in blood volume and an increase in blood pressure as well. So this diagram is also derived from Katzung. You can see here that the angiotensinogen, which is released by the lungs, is converted into angiotensin 1 because of the renin. Then you also have the enzyme here called the angiotensin converting enzyme or the ACE, which converts angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. The angiotensin 2 naman, again, the effects of it is vasoconstriction and aldosterone secretion, ultimately leading to an increase in blood pressure. So you have drugs that target the renin, such as aliskiren. You have also drugs that inhibit the angiotensin converting enzyme or the ACE, which are your ACE inhibitors. An example of which is your um, captopril. So yung mga drugs ending in pril, these are ACE inhibitors. Then for the ARBs naman, you have angiotensin 2 binding to the receptors of the blood vessel to produce vasoconstriction. And you also have receptors to which angiotensin 2 bind to produce aldosterone. These receptors are inhibited by drugs called your angiotensin receptor blockers or ARBs. An example of ARBs is your losartan. So these drugs, your ACE inhibitors and ARBs, the result of this is to inhibit this pathway. So these drugs reverse the effect, which will then become the decrease in blood pressure. So the ARBs and these ABEs inhibitors, these are antihypertensive drugs. Okay. Aside from the maintenance of the water and electrolyte balance in the body, the urinary system is also involved in maintaining the acid-base balance of the blood. The blood pH must be between 7.35 and 7.45. If the blood pH goes below 7.35, you have acidosis. If the pH is above 7.45, you have alkalosis. You have various mechanisms in order to maintain the acid-base balance, but for the kidney, you have the secretion and reabsorption of hydrogen and bicarbonate ions. Yun yung ginagawa ni kidney particularly in the renal tubules, di ba? You have the tubular secretion and tubular reabsorption of hydrogen and bicarbonate ions. In the acid-base controlling system, you also have the blood buffers and respiration. For the blood buffers, you have the acids or the as the proton donors and the bases as the proton acceptors. So a strong acid such as hydrochloric acid dissociates completely into its ions, And you also have the weak acids such as the carbonic acid that does not dissociate completely. Molecules react to prevent dramatic changes in the hydrogen ions concentrations, binding to hydrogen ions when pH drops and releasing hydrogen ions when pH rises. You have three major chemical buffers: the bicarbonate buffer, phosphate buffer system, and the protein buffer system. But for this, we'll just discuss the bicarbonate buffer system. The bicarbonate buffer system, you have, as you know, the the mixture of carbonic acid and sodium bicarbonate. Carbonic acid is produced by the fusion of carbon dioxide and water in blood by your carbonic anhydrase. Okay, so carbon dioxide plus water results to carbonic acid through the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. And the carbonic acid will mix with or with interact with sodium chloride to form your sodium bicarbonate and hydrochloric acid. Your carbonic acid dissociates in the presence of a strong base to form a weak base and water. So for example, if you have carbonic acid, this will produce bicarbonate and water. The opposite naman of the urinary system or the other or the partner other um of the urinary system in maintaining the acid-base balance is the respiratory system. In the respiratory system, we also exhale or control the carbon dioxide levels in our body in order to control the concentration of carbonic acid in the blood as well. As for the urinary system or the renal mechanisms, when blood pH rises, bicarbonate ions are excreted, hydrogen ions are retained by kidney tubules. When blood pH falls, bicarbonate ions are reabsorbed and hydrogen ions are secreted. So we'll discuss this further sa face-to-face na lang. In the developmental aspect of the urinary system, some terms that you can take note are the following. In the aging population, these are some problems that people may describe as they approach the pharmacy. For example, urgency or urinary urgency is the feeling that it is necessary to void. So this is the feeling na parang naiihi ka pero wala kang maihi. Okay? Frequency or urinary frequency is the frequent voiding of small amounts of urine. So, even hindi pa puno yung urinary bladder, this is the feeling na this is the patient has the urge to void frequently. Nocturia is the need to get up during the night to urinate. Incontinence is the loss of control. This is especially in women postmenopausal, mga mothers ninyo or mga grandmas ninyo na makaihi. That is because of the decrease in the tonicity of your internal urethral sphincter. Hindi na makontrol ng internal urethral sphincter yung ihi. Urinary retention is common in males, most often because of the hypertrophy or the enlargement of the prostate gland. The prostate gland again is located surrounding the urethra, so if it enlarges, this constricts the outflow of urine through the urethra. Some terms that you need to take note also are oliguria, which is abnormally low output at less than 300 ml per day, and anuria, which is absence or near total absence of urine output at less than 50 ml per day. Of this, anuria is considered an emergency in which the person should be brought to the emergency room right away. This is in again in within 24 hours if wala ka na naihi, that is also already considered an emergency. UTI or urinary tract infection. The most common is common cause of UTI is Escherichia coli, a gram-negative bacteria. If the UTI involves the inflammation of urethra, that is urethritis. If it involves the inflammation of the urinary bladder, that is cystitis. If the inflamed organ is the kidney, that is pyelonephritis or pyelitis. So, depende yan siya sa organ of the urinary system that is involved. However, all of these are still called urinary tract infection. Nowadays, clinically, the more important terms are whether it is um, complicated or uncomplicated UTI. Usually, females or adult females or are considered uncomplicated or often have uncomplicated UTI. However, male patients that have UTI are considered complicated UTI because they do not usually have UTI. Compared sa compared sa males, the females have shorter urethra. Hence, the distance that bacteria have to travel from the outside to the urinary bladder is quite short compared to the male. Hence, the increase in um, prevalence of UTI in females than in males. So, kung sa females, uncomplicated UTI. Sa males, complicated. Another reason is the proximity of the outside of the or the orifice of the urethra in females to the vagina and to the anus. Also, hygiene din ng females because of the location of the urethral orifice. Ang butas ng urethra ng females, for example, dito yung vaginal opening, nandito yung anus. And some females, they tend to wipe their anus upwards, papunta sa vagina. So, the bacteria from the anus, malilipat siya sa urethral orifice or sa opening ng urethra, hence causing urinary tract infection. So, to summarize this chapter, the urinary system maintains homeostasis by eliminating wastes, regulating blood volume, pressure, and composition. The kidneys are retroperitoneal organs with three main regions, the cortex, medulla, and renal pelvis. The functional unit, which is the nephron, is composed of the renal corpuscle and renal tubule. Urine formation occurs through three processes, the glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. These processes determine the final composition of urine. The RAAS or the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system regulates blood pressure, sodium balance, and fluid volume. The kidney plays a role in fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance, and the urine flows through the ureters, urinary bladder, then to the urethra. The urinary bladder stores urine, the urethra eliminates it. Maturation is controlled by neural reflexes and voluntary sphincters. Proper urinary function is essential for maintaining overall homeostasis. So that's it for chapter 15. Thank you for your attention.